I have thalassophobia, or at least a mild version of it. Thalassophobia is the fear of deep water, though my fear isn't the water itself and is more so the depth of the water. I'm not afraid of any giant beasts that lurk beneath the surface of a seemingly infinite span of wet desert. In fact, the thought of there being anything at all beneath the surface is almost comforting to me. I find the idea of massive things hiding down in the deep dark ocean to be mesmerizing. I have a keen interest in these things, which is why I refer to my fear as mild. I have no issues swimming in deep water, so long as it's calm. Though if I turn my thoughts to that depth and take even a moment to dwell on it, I scurry back onto the relative safety of a boat or platform, whatever it is that keeps me from being suspended over the abyss by nothing more than my own ability to swim. Thinking about the deep, its dark, choking grasp, I am overcome with a feeling of worry. It sinks into my subconscious and makes me feel unsafe. I find the same feeling to approach me when thinking about large drop-offs and caves. Anywhere that the deep exists, anywhere that the bottom is out of sight or even unknown, that is where I begin to get cold feet. That is where I clam up. That is where my anxious mind begins to wander. That is exactly what I love about it. I love to be scared. I love the discomfort. I love the uncanny feeling of something so vast and dark that my monkey brain pulls the emergency brake. I've set out multiple times to find something that truly makes me feel afraid, something that puts me on edge and keeps me there, something that shows the deep in all its glory, fit with the danger and the essence of vast, open nothingness. That something is exactly what Subnautica is. Subnautica is an open-world survival game that was initially released on December 16, 2014 for Windows PCs. Developed and initially published by Unknown Worlds Entertainment, the game remained in early access from then until January 2018, just over 3 years later. Subnautica is about Riley Robinson, a non-essential systems maintenance chief aboard the Aurora spacecraft. The Aurora being a multi-purpose research ship, a ship that crashes on planet 4546b while responding to an old distress call coming from the surface. Riley and the rest of the crew would eject in life pods into the vast oceans of this unknown world, Riley being the only survivor. This is where your experience begins. During the ejection from the Aurora, a blast coming from the ship combined with the force of atmospheric entry cause your life pod to become damaged. Shortly before landing, you are knocked out by flying debris. Luckily, you survive this with very minor injuries. As your PDA's AI says, this is an optimal outcome. During this time, your life pod has lit on fire, but with little issue, you are able to extinguish it. Looking over the damages, the only thing we can do is gather some basic supplies before disembarking the pod.
Orbital hull failure. Cause unknown. 0 human life signs detected.
You are now stranded, out on an alien planet. You have limited supplies, limited training, and limited time. Your chances of survival are not looking good. In the distance, you can see the Aurora, sticking up high out of the sea, burning brightly. Its reactor still seems to be powering the ship, which means radiation is likely flooding out into the surrounding water. Looking around and beyond the Aurora, there is nothing but calm blue ocean. You are completely surrounded by it. There is no escaping it. It squeezes every last inch of dryness around you. It traps you, yet it is your only way of surviving. Your life pod is only capable of generating some little power and a few medkits, yet the pod is busted, needing repairs to continue operating as it should. You need materials, a source of food, and a source of water. Without these, you will die. Taking all of this in, you take your first steps into the deep. The first few moments in this new alien world are strange and confusing. The shallows where you first begin are filled with all kinds of things that you have, for the most part, never seen before. There are some familiar sights like coral, seaweed, and rocks, but just about everything else is completely new. Swimming around, you set out to find materials to repair your life pod. So far, finding the basics: copper, titanium, and quartz. Nothing special, but they will help keep things up and running, at least for a short while. Every now and then you catch a glimpse of the deeper regions just outside of the shallows, the ocean fog hiding everything beyond their reach. You will need to explore these regions, but not without proper gear first. Crafting an oxygen tank and some rudimentary tools, you are now set up for riskier adventures in the deeper parts of the shallows. This is a major theme in Subnautica. The deeper you go, the further you get in the game. You find better resources and open yourself up to more dangers. In a way, Subnautica itself is a representation of the deep, requiring you to descend lower into its stomach to get what you need, being so careful as it doesn't consume you. Diving back into the water, you seek out other materials. You still need a repair tool, requiring materials you have not yet found, prompting further exploration. Suddenly, the water begins to grow dark, your vision becoming impaired. You turn your new flashlight on, which helps, but doesn't hide the darkness surrounding you. The unknown world you are in begins to slowly fade out of sight with every passing second, taking away your ability to see, and as such, your ability to discern depth. Nighttime in Subnautica is what I believe to be the great equalizer. The differences between shallow and deep water begin to slim the darker it becomes. There is no gauging depth in the dark. It's almost like the deep itself has ascended up to you, opening its gaping maw to swallow you whole. For now, the night is an innocent concept. In the shallows, it is simply darker. The water gets deeper, but the darkness doesn't play any tricks on you. There is nothing to be found hiding here, so it is best to continue your work. As morning comes, so does the need to venture deeper. You need that repair tool, and now is the time to get it. Heading out to the kelp forests, you grab the things you need, take a survey of your surroundings, and head back. You make the repair tool and fix up the life pod. With new tools and a functioning shelter, things are beginning to look up. Your chances of survival are still low, but not like they were before. Hope begins to fill you as you look around the life pod. Returning to the sea, you swim close to the bottom, searching for more and more materials, coming across some debris from the Aurora in the process. Scanning the debris uploads crafting schematics to your PDA, allowing you to make more advanced gear. The excitement from this discovery leads you further down the trail of debris, finding more and more blueprints for you to use. You almost don't notice how far you've traveled, or how deep you've gone. While surfacing for air, you finally take notice, seeing just how deep the water around you really is. In the distance, fog becomes thicker and settles on the seafloor. You can see the bottom, but it's becoming hazy, the sight causing your legs to become cold and numb, as if you were held high in place above the edge of a cliff. You are harrowed by what you've seen, knowing that the ocean gets deeper, knowing that the deep is boxing you in. The only way out of this is to descend, to brave the dangers of this alien world, to face the deep. So, taking this into account, you return, the water appearing deeper than before, your nerves beginning to flare up as soon as you see the ground drop suddenly in the distance. Although something catches your eye, a life pod, one that has sunk to the bottom. Wanting to investigate, you descend. At the bottom, the life pod awaits, a gaping hole in its side, torn open by something large. There are no survivors, at least none that you can find. You are, once again, alone. Alone, 100 meters under the surface of the sea. Many thoughts race through your head. None are pleasant, most are desperate. There are more survivors that are out there. There have to be. You can't be the only one. Gathering your thoughts, you ascend for air, knowing that you need to get it together in order to keep surviving. Gathering some rare materials from the area, you make your way back to the life pod. On your way back, you are alerted to something by your PDA. As if things weren't bad enough, the Aurora has had a quantum detonation, meaning that any second, the ship will explode. You surface, watching as the Aurora detonates. It is no longer a matter of possibility that the Aurora has been leaking radiation into the sea. It is now a guarantee. Your PDA downloading the blueprints for a radiation suit, just in case the radiation reaches you. With this explosion, many entrances to the ship open up. There is immense danger in going, but you know the gear on board the Aurora could be the difference between life or death. Going is risky, but ultimately, it will be necessary. You continue your way back to the life pod, receiving a distress call upon your arrival. The call comes from the crew of Life Pod 3. They seem to be in good shape and aren't too far out. You make plans to rendezvous with them, heading out immediately, desperate to be together with someone, anyone. Yet once again, upon arriving, no one is there. You scream but cannot be heard, your cries echoing out into the blue. You search around the pod for anything, something that tells you where they went, but there's nothing. They're gone. The loneliness of this world sinks its teeth into you, what little hope you have fading away. You feel as if it would be better to die here, accept your fate and vanish into the deep like everyone else has. The loneliness of Subnautica is something you don't always notice. Each distress call you get takes you to another wreck, another abandoned pod. You are always alone, at least in a social sense. It is something I didn't notice during my first few times through Subnautica, but now it's something that I can't seem to escape. Returning to the life pod, you notice another call has reached your radio. Thinking only the worst, you listen to it, only to discover it's not a call, but a response. The Sunbeam trade vessel has picked up the Aurora's distress broadcast. They sound skeptical about the legitimacy of the call, but prepare to scan the region further just in case. Just after your hopes had been dashed, they have suddenly been restored. Someone is coming to save you. All you need to do is hold out until they arrive. Taking this newfound motivation, you scramble to make advances. The ship would need somewhere to land. There is no way it would be able to easily land in the water. The next couple days are spent gathering supplies, taking note of the surrounding region and looking for anything you can use to get yourself to the Aurora. From there, you can find better gear to set up a landing zone or reach the Sunbeam at one of their choosing. During these ventures, you head deeper, not anywhere you haven't yet been, but deeper into those areas you have. While exploring, you begin to take notice of the scale of the deep. In one area, large docile creatures float in groups around you, heading off to an unknown place. In another area, a massive chunk of the Aurora sits completely covered by the ocean, the top of it sitting more than 50 meters below the surface. It's beautiful in a somewhat somber way. It signifies death and destruction, the failure of a man-made craft. But it also represents a new roost for life. One day, plant life will overtake it, turning it into a bastion for local creatures. Returning to the life pod, you get another call from the Sunbeam. They have realized the extent of your emergency and are heading for you. Hastening your efforts, you gather everything together for a small submersible. The Seamoth is small. It can't go incredibly deep, but it can get you safely to and from the Aurora. All you need to do is test it out. Taking it to a cave you found earlier, you descend, deeper than ever before. 100 meters, 150 meters, then 200 meters. Getting out, you take notice of something below, a building, one that resembles other underwater research stations back home. It's old and beaten up. Whoever built it is long gone. This must be a survivor base from the crash the Aurora was responding to. Searching the area, you find coordinates to another research station. Arriving there, you take note of the building's interior and exterior, scanning them for later use in your own station. You are now ready to head to the Aurora, ready to take on the dangerous waters surrounding it, ready to escape this place. Taking only what you need, you set out on your excursion to the Aurora. You don't know what you will find there, or how deep the surrounding waters are. The Aurora is a massive ship and took a pretty decent nosedive. For all you know, it could be sitting hundreds of meters in the ocean. Arriving at the vessel, you scan the surroundings for an opening, finding one at the core of the explosion that took place earlier. Climbing up and onto one of the ship's subdecks, you search around for an entrance, the only one you can find being blocked by debris. It could be opened, but only with the right tool. Heading up onto one of the other floors, you find fire and debris blocking your way forward. There is a way around, but it looks unstable. As such, you decide it would be best to come back later. On your way out, you take a look down into the water. It's gotten a lot deeper, a whole lot deeper. You can't see the bottom, but from the safety of your sub you feel alright. Moving through the debris field, you hear a noise. One that's different from the others you've heard so far. At first you think it might be groaning from the Aurora. Exiting the entrance to the Aurora, you hear it again. this time louder. It's still far off, but you can tell it's not mechanical or structural. Looking out into the distance, you spot the source of the noise. It is massive. From the distance you're at, it looks to be anywhere from 40 to 50 meters long. As far as you know, it hasn't noticed you, the fear building up in you escalating as you turn your back to it, racing off to the life pod. The sight of this creature haunts you. You have now seen what the deep has been hiding. The oceans are vast. What you've seen is likely only the tip of the iceberg. You return to your base. The echoes of the ocean you've become used to morph into that roar. Even in the shallows, you feel unsafe. Night falls, the darkness now feeling more sinister, as if it is making the conscious decision to hide the ocean's dangers from you. For the first time since arriving on this planet, you sleep, taking a moment to rest after everything you've been through. You awaken to a new day, the darkness receding back into the deep. Swimming to the life pod, you discover the radio light blinking. A new call has come through. It's the Sunbeam again. They have arrived in the system and are preparing to attempt a rescue landing. From their location, they were able to find an island about 1 kilometer away from the crash site. They will take a couple of days to make landfall, but they're on their way down. You are going to be saved. You think back to the previous day, the monster you saw swimming through the fog, its roars still haunting your every thought. As terrible as the idea may be, you need gear from the ship. You need to be able to survive the trip to the island. Swallowing your fear, you prepare the necessary gear and head off back to the Aurora. Sneaking through the gap in the debris, you return to the subdeck. Removing debris from the entrance you saw earlier, you descend into the stomach of the ship. There isn't much down here, just some PDA logs with a few codes on them. The codes leading you into a room containing a depth module for your Seamoth. Leaving for the upper floors, you take a chance with the unstable beams. They hold just fine, granting you access to the rest of the ship. Entering the cargo bay, you find some pieces to a Cyclops, a much larger submersible capable of taking you much deeper than the Seamoth. Scanning them gives you some extra info about the vessel. Just beyond the cargo bay lies the reactor core. This is what has been spilling radiation into the sea. Fixing it would cost time, but you have plenty of it. The rest of the ship is only accessible with a laser cutter anyways. You fix up the reactor and begin your trek out of the ship, coming to find that night has fallen while you were inside. With your mind clouded by the trip and your rescuers on their way, you forget what surrounds your way out. Entering your Seamoth, you make your way back through the debris field. It isn't long until you are reminded of why you feared this place, the distant roars of that monster cutting through the darkness. Paranoia fills your thoughts. The beast could be anywhere now, hidden just out of sight. In your panic, you nearly run right into the half-sunken remains of a life pod. This one floating upside down, a creature decoy crafting spec sitting inside of it. The PDA log in the pod telling you about the fate of the crew. One of the monsters surrounding the Aurora attacked the pod, tearing a large hole in it. The survivor used the creature decoys to make a path to the Aurora. Considering we didn't find them on board, it's safe to say that we know what happened to them. As dawn breaks, you make your way to the landing zone. It is at this point where you cross over some of the deepest oceans so far. It's nothing you haven't seen before, but the depths are now reaching 200 meters with ease. The roars of distant leviathans pierce through the empty water, reaching your ears and stabbing into your subconscious. It takes all you have to ignore them and press onward into deeper waters. Coming across the island, the thing juts out of the water. It's less of an island and more of a sunken mountain. Taking a look underwater, that appears to be exactly what it is. Exiting your Seamoth and walking onto the beach, your PDA alerts you to something foreign on the island, though it doesn't take long to see it for yourself. A massive alien building sticks off of the island and into the ocean, like a skyscraper but with a more menacing aura. The structure seems to call out to you, wanting you to explore it, yet it is terrifying, completely alien to you. The only thing you can really tell about it is that it didn't get here naturally. There is still time before the Sunbeam arrives, so facing this new unknown, you head in to explore the alien structure. Upon entering, you are met with the sight of complex architecture sticking out of the walls. Descending deeper into the structure, you realize that it is abandoned. There is no one here, and there hasn't been for years. At the core of the structure, you find the control room, or at least that's what your PDA has been calling it. Upon inspecting the core at the center of the room, it freezes your arm in place. A needle of some sort snakes out and stabs you, pulling itself back into place and releasing your arm afterwards. The core lets out a noise. Your PDA translates it as a message.
The control panel is broadcasting a message. Translation reads, Warning, infected individuals may not disable the weapon. This planet is under quarantine.
The weapon? This building is a weapon? You think back to when the Aurora crashed. You remember the cause being related to an energy pulse. Coming to a horrifying realization, you race out of the structure. You need to warn the Sunbeam. It cannot land. Reaching the landing zone, you reach up to try to signal the craft. It is no use. Without a radio, there is no way of warning them. Trying your best to motion them away, you watch as the building begins to rise and take form, aiming straight for the Sunbeam. Your cries go unheard. You're flailing useless. The Sunbeam does not change course. Radio broadcasting from the craft tell you that they've taken notice of the weapon, but not what it is. You watch helplessly as the weapon charges, unable to look away. And then, it happens. This moment, more than any other in Subnautica, sheds all doubt that you will have to face the deep. Not in the ways I've already said, but truly face it. From here, the deep sinks so low that daylight does not touch the bottom. Leviathans and other hostile creatures freely roam these waters. The concepts of the natural world begin to warp, twisting themselves into unfamiliar shapes. The world beneath the surface is alien, far more so than the shallows or anywhere like them. Down here is a nightmare that has yet to be lived through. Down here is death. Down here is suffocation. But down here is also salvation. The deep is not your friend. It is still a force to be reckoned with, but it has helped you this far. You have become used to it, its roars and cries, the groans of whale-like leviathans living by the shallows, the sound of the waves. The fear that once caused you to avoid touching the bottom has vanished, now replaced with determination to chase it. So, you use that determination and rise to action. Thinking your options over, you come to a realization. You know that no one is coming to save you. Even if they did, they would meet the same fate as the Sunbeam. You can't just sit around the shallows and wait. You have all you need to survive for a decent amount of time, but like the weapon said, you are infected. Whatever disease you have will end up killing you long before the planet does. You need to find a cure, you need to escape this place, and the only way to do either of those things is to head deeper. Taking note of this, you begin to make plans. Whoever built the weapon had to have escaped somehow. The weapon can't be the only building they left either. You need gear, more advanced than what you already have. With a laser cutter in hand, you could return to the Aurora, though you do need to return to your base first for supplies. Arriving back at base, you receive another distress call. You've received a few more since the initial two, but this one is different. It comes from Officer Keene, now in command of the Aurora's crew. He landed and is requesting all survivors meet at another bit of dry land near his crash site. This could be it. Somebody besides yourself to talk to. Another human face for the first time in weeks. Hastily readying supplies, you almost forget about the dangers of the water outside the shallows. The things lurking there. It doesn't hit you until you are well past the kelp fields just how risky this venture is. You are suspended in your Seamoth over a large drop into the darkness. There is no bottom here, at least not one easily seen. Keene's distress call location is somewhere down there, 300 meters below the surface, as deep as your Seamoth can go. You plunge, down into the dark, following the edge of the underwater cliffside, down into a ravine cutting through the ocean floor. Keene's life pod is in ruins like the others, though you don't give up hope just yet. Grabbing a PDA left in the pod, you get the coordinates you're looking for. Ascending towards the rendezvous point, you spot land emerging from the fog. Parking your Seamoth next to the coast, you make your way to the coordinates Keene's PDA sent you. Upon arriving, another PDA can be found, but no Keene. On the PDA, an audio recording between the survivor from LifePod 3 and Keene is found. Listening to it reveals that the two traveled to the Aurora. A final message from Keene tells us that they did not make it. You feel strangely disappointed, not crushed like you were with the other losses. At this point, you are alone, and you have come to terms with it. Exploring the island further brings you to a set of abandoned bases, more left by the crew that first crashed here. You find some PDA logs, but not much more. You decide to head back to your base. However, on your way back, you are stopped by something. It feels weird, like a voice inside your head, a telepathic connection with something that feels different.
What are you?
It then drifts away, sliding back out of your mind. You blink, not quite knowing what just happened. You try so hard to write it off as a hallucination, but it felt real, too real. You can't stop thinking about it as you return to your base. Even there, it doesn't leave your mind. Surely I'm just tired. A little bit of sleep will fix this, you think as you slip into bed, the voice still echoing in your mind. It feels like it came from somewhere deeper than you could possibly know. In your sleep, you dream of a place far beneath the surface. It's hot, bright, and dangerous, but it calls to you. The image buries itself into your mind, unable to be forgotten. You now have a new goal, to find it. Whatever it was that contacted you, it will help you. You can feel it. Waking the next day, you set off for the Aurora. Arriving, you begin to crack away at the sealed doors, gaining access to the prawn suit bay. Scanning the prawn suits gives you the prawn suit blueprint. A prawn suit would be excellent for deep-water exploration, but you'll need upgrades if you expect to take this thing super deep. Passing through some flaming hallways, you make your way into the sleeping quarters. Not much can be found here, just a few PDA logs and 2 locked rooms, neither of which you have the code for. Noting this down, you know that you will be coming back one last time once you have the code. For now, you have other tasks at hand. Leaving the Aurora, you know that this is it. It's now or never. You need a Cyclops, and soon. Your return to the life pod goes smoothly. You don't even hear the Leviathan's roars. Upon arriving at the life pod, you see that you have one last radio message. It comes from Altera, the company who sent you here in the first place. They have plans to help you. They've sent a blueprint to the captain's quarters on the Aurora. Blueprints for a rocket, away off this place. They leave you with the code to the room, and then you are plunged back into the deafening silence of your thoughts. You weren't expecting this information to come so soon. You were just there in front of that locked door. You can't return for the blueprints just yet. You're still infected and in need of a cure. Taking note of your exhaustion from the day's events, you lay down. The image in your mind of the bright cavern deep below the sea is all you can think of now. After a night's sleep, you venture out. It's time to build a Cyclops. With the Cyclops in hand, the journey to the deep is set before you. The massive submarine will be tricky to maneuver with just one pilot. Some spaces may require you to disembark the craft entirely. Planning ahead, you grab some items and load up the Cyclops, saying goodbye to your base before you set off for the island. You need at least some direction to head. The image in your mind is clear, but it doesn't exactly tell you where to look. As you approach the island, you hear the roars of the Leviathans below. The Cyclops is big and strong. It comes well equipped to handle an attack from a hostile creature. The Cyclops fills you with a sense of security and confidence, as well as determination. This thing is your ticket down, and as such, is your ticket to freedom. Arriving at the weapon, you dock the Cyclops in the underwater bay, the massive sub making the bay look like a bathtub. Inside the weapon, you find a data terminal with a list of research bases. This is almost what you need. It tells you roughly where to find a cave leading to the next alien base. Taking this information, you head back to the Cyclops and back out into open water. Using the ping from another sunken life pod to set yourself in the right direction, you head out on your journey down. The Cyclops creaks and groans as you descend deeper into the dark. At times it feels as if the hole is going to burst, but it never does. Approaching the life pod, multiple creatures begin to swarm the Cyclops. At first, they just bump into the sub, though it isn't long until they begin to attack it. Thinking quickly, you launch a decoy to get them off of you, but they quickly swarm again, the sub taking shallow cuts along the hull, leaking water into the bridge. Another decoy finally gets them off of you. Though it doesn't feel safe to do so, you exit the Cyclops and quickly repair the hull. The Cyclops isn't completely safe. It is still vulnerable to attacks, and if these smaller creatures are capable of this kind of damage, then the Leviathans are capable of far worse. The last place you want to be stuck is down at the bottom of the ocean, especially in a sub on the brink of destruction. You rig the Cyclops for silent running, just in case something else in the water hears you. Reorienting the sub, you return on your journey. Using the sub's sonar, you search the darkness for an entrance to the cave. Deeper and deeper you go, flying just above the bottom of the sea, listening to the roars of Leviathans up above. Then you spot it, a massive hole in the ground leading to a cave system. This is it, the point of no return. Coming back out of this cave will be difficult, though you know you won't be returning until you are cured. There is no knowing what challenges await you in here. Descending further, saying goodbye to the world above, you enter into the final frontier, to answer the call of the deep. This world is far different than anything else you've seen so far. Whether or not it's night or day doesn't matter, the only light coming from bioluminescence emanating from the floor and walls. The natural laws that bind the world above are loosened here, not quite undone, but many things are different. Rivers of dense gas and fluids flow down the rocky bottom of the cave. Translucent rays swim through the passage, flapping their wing-like fins. A ghostly Leviathan swims in the distance. It doesn't seem to be interested in you, but you aren't willing to find out if it is. Further in the cave, the base recorded on the alien terminal fades into view. It is massive, sitting in a giant open room, held in place by arms that latch onto the cave walls. Disembarking the Cyclops, you enter the base. Inside, you find the remains of several different creatures, including the massive skeleton of another Leviathan. It is long dead, though you can easily swim through its mouth. The thought of what it might have looked like makes you shudder. Finding nothing else of note, you return to the Cyclops, ready to head further into the cave. As you continue onward, you come across a massive tree. It is surrounded by those translucent rays. The environment here is peaceful. You wonder why the tree is down here, or what its purpose is. In the next room, a pit in the floor opens up to a deeper section of the cave system. The bioluminescent light guiding you begins to fade away as you sink lower into the bowels of the planet. Your sonar guides you through the passageway, the walls closing in on you, the way forward becoming tighter and harder to navigate. It isn't long before you are spat out into a large room, considerably larger than the one that held the previous base. The temperature down here increases with each meter dove. Red-hot seams crack out of the surrounding terrain. Upon closer inspection, you find the rock around you to be made of lava. A loud roar suddenly brings your attention back to what's ahead of you. Looking up, you see the outline of a massive dragon-like Leviathan, lit up by your sonar. It propels itself using its massive arms, swimming high above you. Attempting to avoid it, you descend into a hole in the floor, using its continued roaring as motivation to leave. Down in the hole, you make the decision to squeeze through a tight opening in the walls, taking you deeper into the cave. Suddenly, you feel it again, the telepathic connection. It calls out to you once more.
I am what you seek. Want to help you.
As your vision returns to normal, you see another Leviathan swimming towards you. You are sandwiched between the two creatures. Going either direction runs the risk of being attacked by them. But you can't turn back now. You can't cower here in this tiny gap. Salvation is just ahead of you. You can feel it. You charge forward, testing fate. The Leviathan turns, losing any interest it may have had before. You enter into the lava-filled cavern. A large building comes into view in the distance. The connection you feel to the voice in your head grows stronger. You are here, your journey nearly over, all the way at the bottom of the sea. You have made it. This is as low as it goes. The bright lava stinging your eyes, the heat being almost unbearable, your protective dive suit only doing so much to help you. Approaching the door, the locking system opens to reveal a blue symbol. You had brought purple tablets in case of this, but the thought never occurred to you that there might be multiple types. You remember there being another base listed on the alien data log, one hidden inside a lava structure. There's one up above this room, but it's guarded by one of those dragon leviathans. Knowing it's likely your only shot at finding a way inside, you head back to the Cyclops and prepare to return to the other cave. The dragon in this lower room being nowhere to be found, a path is open to the higher cave. Taking this chance, you start the Cyclops and head on your way. The roars of the dragon above help to guide your way forward. The massive lava cast in the center of the room has a lot of potential entrances, though you know there has to be one that can fit the Cyclops. Circling the structure with your sonar, you find no such entrance. What you do find is a small opening marked by 2 alien pillars. Knowing that your time is growing shorter, you take the risk and leave the Cyclops, swimming through the opening. Entering the passage, you spot many rare materials that could be helpful for later. You follow them almost like a trail of crumbs to a larger opening in the lava cast. Another base sits dead in the center, almost identical to the one at the beginning of the cave system. It looks like a large heart sitting inside the center of the cast, bringing life to the other bases outside of the cave. Inside of the base, you find exactly what you're looking for. Taking the blue tablet, you head further inside. One floor lower, you find what you believe to be a generator, at the top of which is a data log containing blueprints for ion-powered gear. You can feel yourself coming closer to the end of your journey. All you need to do now is talk with the creature that lives within that building. Arriving back, you unlock the force field and walk inside. With every step you take, the connection to the voice grows stronger and stronger, guiding you to a room at the back of the facility. Unlocking it, you find a massive pool. Whatever it is that has been contacting you is here. You approach the edge and stop. Everything that has happened, every risk you've taken, every inch of progress made, they've all led up to this. Each memory flashing back in your mind as you prepare to take these final steps. Then you take it, the final plunge. The Leviathan latches onto the platform, pulling itself up within view. Then it speaks.
Are you here to play? Others came here once. They built these walls. They played alone. They bored me. Now they're gone. And instead, we have you. We are curious whether you swim with the current or fight against it, as they did.
She is massive, by far the largest creature you've seen so far. Surfacing, you take a deep breath before diving down into the pool, ready to face whatever is next. It is hard to believe that anything can be peaceful on this planet, and it is good to know that after all of this time, you are not alone. Even if your company is a 200-meter-long sea creature, sometimes it's good just to have someone to talk to, regardless of who that may be. Swimming down with her, you come across a station containing 5 large eggs. You recall her talking about a we, implying it's not just her down here. This must be what she meant. A receiver opens up near the eggs. You insert an ion cube into it, lighting up a panel in the center in the process. The Leviathan approaches.
My young need to hatch, to play outside this place. We have been here so long. The others built a passage to reach the world outside. I asked them for this freedom, but they could not hear me.
She blows sand away from another structure, one you have seen before. She refers to it as a passage. This must be a way to the surface somehow. Inserting another ion cube, the passage opens, a portal leading somewhere outside of this place. The Leviathan seems happy with your cooperation. Another image fills your mind, or well, a set of images. You take note of them in your PDA. They appear to be ingredients for something, an enzyme of some sort. Taking a look at the eggs, you know what must be done. Heading through the portal, you return to the surface, arriving just outside the weapon's docking bay. Heading back to base on your sea glide, you build another sea moth and get to work. The first few ingredients should be easy. You saw them while on your search for Cyclops parts. Arriving at your first location, you finally notice just how deep you've been going. In this region, light is consumed by the deep. Looking up reveals hardly a hint of the surface. You quickly gather your materials, not wanting to find out what lives in this lightless region. You gather ingredients 3 and 4 with relative ease, not many threats showing themselves in these regions. You wonder just how risky these places really were, if you were just afraid of nothing. Distant roaring reminding you that your worries were not in fact invalid. The final ingredient is something you've not yet found. You check the surrounding regions with no luck. Backtracking to a few places you may have seen one, you come up each time empty-handed. Tired and wanting to take a break, you head back to base. Though on your way there, you pass by a cave opening you haven't seen before. Heading down, you come across a single plant, the exact one you've been looking for. Collecting it, you ignore how tired you are, reinvigorated by the excitement that you might finally be done, by the thought of freedom. Returning to the portal, you make your way through the pool and back to your Cyclops, using an onboard fabricator to synthesize the enzyme. Taking it back down to the pool, you insert it into the machine, delivering the enzyme to the eggs. They begin hatching, the babies taking a few moments to gather their bearings before talking with their mother. It's a beautiful thing to watch. You feel as if this moment is important, more so than any other moment you've witnessed so far. The Leviathan speaks to you one final time.
My young are swimming for the shallows. I thank you. Their freedom is my end. What will it be like, I wonder, to go to sleep and never wake up? Perhaps next we meet, I will be an ocean current, carrying seas to a new land. Or a creature so small, it sees the gaps between the grains of sand. Farewell, friend.
You didn't expect the Leviathan to be so frail. It shows now that she was saving her strength for this moment. Now she is dying. You don't want her to die. She's your one companion here. Though, as much as it pains you, you have to accept it. There is nothing you can do. You approach the goo coughed up by one of the babies. Touching it, the slimy substance covers your hands and sinks into your skin. Horrified at first, you try to remove it, but you soon realize that this was it all along. This is the cure. You are free from the shackles of death holding you down. You are no longer bound to this world by a disease, or by anything else really. The only thing keeping you here now is you. It is time to leave this place. You exit the facility. You weren't here long, but it feels like it's been weeks. You are tired beyond belief, though there is still work to be done. Climbing aboard the Cyclops, you begin your ascent, up and out of the cave. For the first time in days, your thoughts are silent, your mind focused on piloting the sub. A dragon Leviathan swims the closest it has during your time here, but doesn't attack. As if it is saying goodbye, thankful for the company you've provided. Up and out of the cave you go, through a hole in the ceiling leading you back to the first passageway, then out of the cave's mouth. All you have been through has led up to now, the soft whirring of the Cyclops' engine filling the silence in your mind. Emerging into open water, you stare out into the nothingness ahead. Once terrifying, it now has no power over you. Surfacing, you once again take in the daylight, glad to be back out of the darkness. Your only task left is to escape. After some rest, you venture out one final time to the Aurora. The task is essentially routine at this point, slipping through the hull breach and into the lower portion of the ship. Opening up the captain's quarters, you find the data terminal the Altera call mentioned. Grabbing it, you leave the ship, taking one final look around the place before leaving for good. You head off to the weapon, ready to disable it and secure your path to the stars. Deactivating the weapon brings you one step closer to freedom, the booming noises coming from the building letting you know the task is complete. Leaving the island, you listen one last time to the roars of the nearby Leviathans, happy to never return to this place. Back at base, you gather the first few materials for the rocket, starting by building the launch platform. After some rest, you prepare what you need to build the stabilizing tower. All that's left now is the rocket itself. While getting everything together, you think about your journey. The hardest parts are far behind you now. You've been down there, to the deepest parts of the ocean, You've ascended from it and are now on your way home. Home. Somehow you haven't thought about it in weeks. Your mind has been so focused on survival that you've almost forgotten what it's like to be home. You set your focus to it, using it as motivation to build the rocket as soon as you can. Working day in and day out, the rocket begins to take shape. Your efforts in collecting resources earlier now paying off. It's almost saddening to know that you'll be leaving. Who really knows how long you've been here? The solar patterns don't match those of Earth, so you very well could have been here for months. Though this place is not your home. It never has been and never will be. But it has provided you with the resources you've needed to survive. It's shown you some truly beautiful things. And in return, you have helped it, hatching the baby leviathans and spreading a cure to the planet's infection. Your time here was not spent poorly. Both you and this place have helped each other. While you don't think of it as home, you do think of it as a friend, at least somewhat. Perhaps you two are just acquaintances, not terribly close, nor loyal to one another, but you aren't enemies, benefiting each other as you go along. Your thoughts of home get stronger with each passing moment, each day bringing a new piece of the rocket. Then, on the final day, as you go to sleep, your PDA alerts you that your job is finished. The rocket is massive, the days of work put into it being well worth it. Turning around, you take a final look at your base. It will remain here, the onboard AI keeping it alive for as long as it can. Then it will begin to shut down, slowly becoming abandoned, like all the other bases you found. You take a final look at the Aurora, sticking out of the sea. You know it will be decades before it fully collapses, and even then, it won't fully disappear. Ascending up the platform, you approach the rocket. Will you ever come back here, you think? There are a lot of resources, many that could be useful back home, though you understand that further tampering with this place would likely lead to its destruction. You think it best that nobody ever returns, though you get a feeling that you won't get your wish. Inside the rocket, you prepare for launch, activating the onboard controls, life support, and everything else to get you to space. You step outside one last time, taking it all in and saying goodbye. Sitting down at the controls, you prep the last few things for liftoff. The countdown begins. You sit back and stare into the sky. This is it. There is nothing stopping you now. The rocket lifts off, breaching the clouds and heading into space. A piece of debris collides with the ship, knocking a panel loose, but you and the rocket are unharmed. Staring down at the planet, its tiny islands almost unnoticeable at this height, you think about how lucky you were to crash where you did, how lucky you were that you found a cure. Though none of that matters now. You are free, you are safe, you are going home. Subnautica sticks out in my mind when I think about games that scare me, because after it's over, I realize that my fears are gone. I'm still terrified by deep water, but Subnautica reminds me that the deep is something to be respected. Sure, the place has its threats, but it also holds some of the most beautiful things anyone could ever see. It's an alien world down there, one we as humans have every right to explore. As I ascend from the deep caverns in Subnautica, I'm always overcome with the same feeling. The feeling that all of this was worth it. That my suffering has brought me closer to the end of my journey. My hard work taking me here. I have overcome my fears, the icy feeling in my veins when staring down into the abyss, the pounding in my head as paranoia sets in. I have pushed past these feelings and sought to find what is at the bottom. I can't say that this is the same feeling I would get in real life. Subnautica is just a video game after all. The experience does help somewhat though. I am not as terrified by the deep as I once was, knowing the potential discoveries to be found in the beautiful environments we have discovered. The representation of the deep in Subnautica, and the one I've tried to express throughout the story, is one that is less literal and more figurative. There is a deep in everything, whether it be within yourself or out in the greater world. It could be anything from learning a new subject to moving to a new place. It could even be something familiar, something that you've lived with or around for your whole life. A challenge to overcome, one that appears bottomless, hopeless, and frightening. A challenge that is full of potential risks and pains. At times, it feels as if it would be better to avoid these challenges entirely, staying in the safety of the shallows where nothing can hurt you. But there in the shallows, you will not grow. You will not progress. You may be okay there, but there is so much more waiting for you in the deep. All you need to do is brave it. Take the plunge and put in the careful work required to overcome it, ascending from the deep and claiming it for yourself. You are the master of your own destiny, and you will not be controlled by your fears. Please, if there is anything I want you to learn from this, it is not to be afraid of difficult things. It may seem impossible to you, but with some help and determination, you can do anything. Develop your talents, find something that matters to you, descend into your own abyss, and return triumphant. I know you can do it, and I know you know this as well. As we say goodbye to Subnautica, we close a chapter of our lives, one that we may return to someday. For now, there are several new horizons to chase, new journeys to go on, new depths to traverse, all new opportunities to face the deep.